Welcome to the Mom Existence podcast. I am so happy that you're back here and happy Thursday, everyone. I'm feeling a bit insane today because, like, what happens sometimes, I guess, every month to me around my period or about a week to 2 weeks before my period, I get random insomnia. It's so freaking annoying. Last night, I could not get to sleep, which should have been my first sign that I was in for it or got up or took something like melatonin because I just could not get to sleep. And before I knew it, it was 1:30, then it was 2:30 that I may have drifted off for a little bit. And my son, of course, wakes up at 5:45 a.m. He's usually a very consistent he has been sleeping actually until about 7 a.m., which has been a freaking dream. But he's usually consistent around like 6:30 to 7:15, that kind of realm, which is super normal, I think. And I'm so grateful that he even sleeps till 6 a.m. But he woke up at 5:45, so I hadn't really slept all night, and my sleep is all over the place. And then, of course, that happens, which I am chalking up to teething. I know we do that a lot, too. But he's being just a bit strange at bedtime, and he woke up in the middle of the night, like, crying the other day, so I think that he's just maybe in some type of transition or growth or discomfort, so thoughts and prayers for all of us and our sleep tonight because we know, mom life, you need those hours. They are freaking important. But yeah, so I feel a little crazy and tired. So hoping tonight is just like a blissful sleep. I've been watching Love is Blind, the new season, which I have to keep rewinding and rewatching because I end up falling asleep. It's just so soothing. I guess it's because they're having conversations. It's pretty chill, not really a lot of drama yet. But I've been loving that. That has been putting me to sleep. So let's hope that that gets me to where I need to go tonight when I jump in bed. So last week I had so much fun, I guess weekend, Thursday, Friday, with some events and social activities. And when you're a mom and you get to get out and get glammed, I got my hair done and my makeup done, a new outfit. It is so it's so good. It's so good for the soul to just get a blowout and get your makeup done. Shout out to Vicky Mina, especially because I felt like I had a facelift. I don't even know what she did. I felt the most beautiful I think I've ever felt in my life. So, moms, if you're feeling a little down in the dumps, get a blowout or get your makeup done or something. It really does lift your spirits. I cannot recommend more. I wish I could get my makeup done all the time. I joked to Vicky saying that this must be how the Kardashians feel every day because they are in full glam, I would say like 90% of the time when they're not at home because they're usually at events or doing photo shoots and campaigns that you just must feel like you are hot as hell. I don't know. But yeah, so we went to the celebrity sports dinner here at Halifax, which is a fundraiser and supporter of the Progress Club. And they had some fabulous, fabulous, fabulous guests this year. But the headliners, I should say, and kind of who I love for whatever reason is Ryan Whitney and Paul Bissonnette. They are characters. I'm sure if you're in the podcast world or social media or sporting world, you have listened or seen some of their content. So they have a podcast called Spitting Chicklets. And for those of you who don't know and are new here, I used to have a podcast. It's kind of just on pause. My first one, which was called Rival and Queen with my best friend Sarah. And we had kind of joked about starting a podcast and wanting to. And one night they were here in town doing a podcast recording with Sydney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon. And we were all out in the mix for many different reasons. And we saw them, and all the guys are just like obsessed with them, right? Like swooning over them at the bar. And Sarah and I were watching this and being like, okay, this is cool. This is fun. From podcasting. Okay, okay. And we looked at each other and we're like, let's fucking do it. Like, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Let's start our podcast. Like this could be our reality. Anyway, so it was just kind of funny to see them here back in Halifax at this event. And you know, just some characters out there. They like to drop a lot of F-bombs. I think people expect it, but They are really, really good at what they do, and they put in a lot of hard work, and they were big supporters of, a lot of different fundraisers, so it was really good to see the work that they were doing while they were here in Halifax. Okay, we've got an amazing episode. Enough for me. This is not a solo. My guest this week is Chloe Wilde, who, if you're watching TV, you've probably seen her on there. First of all, she was on Much Music. She was a VJ. She won their VJ search. She is a TV personality, journalist, podcaster, and new mom who is like all of us navigating that first year of chaos and just new mom life while getting back into work and back into who she is. She loves fashion. She's actually got a 100 Days of Fashion going on Instagram at Chloe Wilde, which you need to check out. Her outfits are fire. Her style is incredible. Some of them are done on set, some of them are at home. Anyways, go and check that out. She is finding pure joy and just Chloe through doing all these fun things, which I can so appreciate. She is stunning. This week, we are both opening up about our different struggles and journeys and IVF, the losses and challenges that she has faced. She has a very, very unique story before welcoming her little sweet boy, and how we both are just experiencing this crazy mom life ride together and some of the struggles that we both have encountered. So stay here. Don't go anywhere. We're going to dive right in. And I hope you guys like, subscribe, or send this episode to a friend. It means a lot. And see you on the other side.
Chloe Wilde, welcome to the Mom Existence. I'm so happy.
I love that this is part of my life now. I get to be part of worlds like this because, yeah, it's right. I'm a mom now.
I know. I mean, you seem to have a fun and fabulous life, but I'm so happy that you're here. And I'm so happy through the power and the universe of social media. That is how we connected. And I'm so happy that you're here to kind of talk about your story and a little bit about Chloe and who you are and what you do and all the fun things. And we were just chatting before. I think the first time we connected on a quick call, you were sick and your son was sick and like your family was going through that. And that was post vacation. And we just came out of like a post vacation flu. I don't know what's happening, but like this is true mom life.
Yeah, I like to say that no good deed goes unpunished. So we decided to have a holiday and then we got hit with some germs. But I still think it's worth it. We've
Mm-hmm.
been so lucky and fortunate enough to travel quite a bit with our little guy. We started off by going to Florida, so not too far from Toronto. Then we went to Anguilla, which is where one of my girlfriends lives. Then we went to South Africa, which is where my partner is in Dubai. And I got to tell you, and then Mexico. And every
Wow.
single time we travel, we come back and one of us is sick. And so we've just accepted that when we go on these big family adventures, there's going to be repercussions when we come home, but it is always worth it.
At least as long as no one's sick on the vacation, I think that's the main, or like trying to stay healthy up until, because I get super paranoid. Do you before a vacation that like the plague will take us down and we won't be able to go?
You know what? Washing hands is
Mm-hmm.
something that I do probably aggressively, but it is exactly for that reason. If our family decides to go on an adventure, nothing will stop us, which means we are doing everything we can to stay in tip-top shape. I will deal with whatever comes our way when we get home, but I'm with you. I'm always kind of top of mind, checking in on how everyone's doing health-wise, especially the little guy, because when my mind is set on the fact that we're going somewhere and escaping on a bit of an adventure, especially somewhere warm in the middle of the Canadian winter, I really will not let anything stand in the way, including germs. So it makes it that much more of a priority to keep the entire family healthy.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's so hard. It's hard. Like I was also sick when my son was sick. So it's hard to be a parent and take care of yourself, which is hard to do. Like you just can't. You have to take care of this little human. But it is parenting is not for the faint of heart. And like these things hit you. And sometimes I think to myself, I don't even know how I just did that because I was basically on my deathbed and like had to still go on, still do the things.
I mean, in showbiz, we always say the show must go on, but really that translates more than anything to parenthood. Speaking of feeling like you're on your deathbed and somehow having to dig deep, um, gosh, it reminds me of when Gray and I, my son, his name is Gray, we had to travel from Dubai, just the two of us. My partner had to stay in Dubai. So from Dubai to Toronto, it's a 15-hour
Oh my
straight
God.
flight. And lo and behold, get to the airport. I've got the snack bag. I've got the toy bag. We've got all kinds of sensory toys. Like, I'm feeling ready for whatever is about to come my way. But what I didn't have on my bingo card, Ashley, is the fact that I got hit with a wicked 24-hour flu once I got through security and was about to board a 15-hour flight with a 1-year-old little munchkin who is like Johnny Knoxville on Tasmanian Devil, mixed into one. Like, he is wonderful but hyper and likes to cause chaos.
Oh
And
my
all of a
God.
sudden, I was vomiting on the plane. I was
No.
dizzy. I couldn't like stay upright because I was so nauseous. And I don't know how I got through the 15-hour flight, but it just goes to show that when you don't have a choice and you have a little person, your own well-being sometimes just is not the priority. And that flight taught me that we are capable of so much. And I don't know how I would have gotten through that flight if I hadn't have had him. Like, I really felt like I was the sickest I have ever felt in my
Oh my
life on a
God.
plane. I mean, vomiting and holding a baby crying is
Were the flight attendants like, oh my God, this poor woman?
they were all so kind and trying to help by, taking Gray out of my arms while I was vomiting in the little bag. But poor guy, I mean, he was aware that something wasn't right with mama and he
Yeah.
wouldn't let anyone take him. So I just kind of
Oh.
had to have him in one arm, the puke bag in the other. And I just kept counting down, looking at the flight trackers, seeing that we were approaching Toronto slowly
Just
but
a cool
surely.
15 hours, not like 4 hours.
It was brutal, but with that said, I am still looking forward to traveling with him. So I really do
It
love
can't get
going on an
worse.
adventure, but yeah, that's it. Like, I've experienced, I think, as bad as it gets. And so bring it on 2025.
But like, of course, that would only happen on probably the longest flight you guys have ever done together. And when you're solo parenting, that's insane. But good
It
for
was a
you.
lot.
I'm cheering you on. I'm proud of you because I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do it. Okay, I kind of want to just rewind and talk. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for a living? Because it's so fun how you started out.
Oh, yes, 100%. So when I'm not in full mom mode, which is, I think, my most important, rewarding, fulfilling, draining, exhausting job of my life, I work as a TV host in Canada on an entertainment show called E-Talk. Been doing TV now for, gosh, 12 years. It's been
Wow.
such a big part of my life. And I love it. We do all things entertainment and lifestyle and pop culture. So from film festivals to chefs launching new restaurants to musicians touring, we get to cover it all. So my day job is incredibly fun. The people I work with are like family. We've all worked together, some of us, for the entire time I've been at the company for 12 years. I started off at Much Music, which, if you're a Canadian, is just such an iconic.
Legendary.
Yeah, it's iconic. I was only a part of that world for a little bit before it changed, but I still got to have the experience that is Much Music and work in the iconic building, and then did some stuff on Discovery Channel because I have a background in science, and in my core, I'm just this like big nerd that used to be obsessed with neuroscience and cognitive psychology. And then eventually I made my way over into the entertainment space at eTalk. And now I'm just trying to find my way every single day, balancing both worlds. And this is like the biggest challenge of my life, being able to show up at work fully and being able to compartmentalize what it is that we all live and experience outside of our 9 to 5s when we're parents. And then as well, make sure that I still have enough energy in the tank so that when I come home, I can still be so committed to my little baby boy, be the best mom I can be. Because it used to be that my job was my everything. I gave everything to my work and my career. And I used to have a podcast and a website in the health and wellness space. And I was so active in my community. And then when I became a mom, I had to scale back on some things so I could make space for this new and, really important new job, which was being Gray's mama. So my life is a little bit more simple now. I really have 2 big jobs rather than having like 12 little jobs. And yeah, it's a juggling act every single day, but I think I'm slowly finding my way.
How old is he again? Remind me.
We are almost at the 18-month mark,
Oh,
like a year
wow.
and a half.
Okay. My son just turned 2 last week, which is crazy. But I liked, honestly, there's so many, I don't know if you feel the same way, that there's stages you like feel are so lovely and blissful. And then other stages or ages that you're just like, I don't like this. I don't like whatever's happening here. but I liked after the 18-month mark. Maybe you don't feel the same way, but I found, I don't know, I like the ability to communicate a bit differently and stuff like that. Obviously, that comes with a lot of challenges with toddlers saying no or throwing shit. But I don't know. I don't want to rush it away, but I like where we're like heading, if that makes sense.
Oh, good on you. I feel like that's such a rare thing for parents to say, like, bring on the twos. I feel like
Bring them on.
society has told us that we need to be very scared of the twos, but I like that your mindset is bring it on. I have to say, I'm someone who, like, I've been enjoying every phase more and more. Like, I think the joy part is compounding. It's definitely a lot more tiring as he's becoming his own little person and not just always doing what mama says. But the joy part is unreal. Like watching him, he just recently started doing imaginative play. And it's like I was watching Einstein like develop theories. I was so blown away by the fact that he was pretending to pour liquid into a cup out of his tea kettle. Like my mind just went like, I have raised a genius. Watch out. We're gonna change the world. And I think that's what's so fun about this stage is he's becoming his own little dude. Like he's a little
Mhm.
dude who's exploring the world. But I am looking forward to the verbal portion because right now I'm just constantly trying to decipher what the babble means. And the whining drives me bananas,
Ugh,
and I'm
yeah.
just like, "Listen, if you and I can find a way to communicate, you will be happier, you will whine less, which will therefore make mama happier, and the
Mm.
whole household will run better." So I'm looking forward to a little bit more of that verbal communication because right now I just kind of, like, present whatever I think he might need and hope for the best.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I feel like they get so frustrated with how to communicate, like, the way that they want or effectively. And I think that's part of the whining and just like I mean, like Cash is still throwing tantrums, but now you can kind of try and negotiate or like manipulate them into situations, which is kind of fun. But I think you're right. We hear about the terrible twos, and then I've heard people call them the fucked up threes. People say three is worse than two. And until you're in it or become a parent, you
Yeah.
only start to learn these things. And it's the same way like Hollywood and TV in general or social media has painted motherhood over however many years of like, it's this way and it's lovely and you're connected and everyone's happy, which is obviously not the case. And I feel like as kids age or change and go through these like developmental stages, we think they're going to be a certain way and sometimes they're not. So I feel like every kid is so different and every household is so different that like twos could be amazing. I don't know.
You're gonna have an
We're going to find out.
amazing yeah, I don't listen, I can't guarantee no fucked up threes, but I've got a feeling your twos are gonna be great. I'm starting to see, like, little hints of tantrum-like behavior,
Okay.
and I'm terrified, Ashley. Like,
Hmm.
I need to know how do I manage a tantrum? I'm terrified. I know it's gonna happen, probably in a public setting one day, and
Always.
I wanna be equipped with the tools.
As a person who likes to take in information a lot, which it can be very helpful and a disservice at times. I feel like number one, it's usually they're hungry or some, number one and two. I don't know which one comes first or last, depending, but it's like they're either tired or they're hungry or they're just like done. And that did
Yeah.
happen in the summer. So around the 18-month mark for my son, I was leaving Home Sense with my mom. And like everything was fine, but he wanted to push the cart. He was fixated on putting the shopping cart back. So I let him, but then he wanted to take the shopping cart with us. And in those moments and at that age, you can explain it and try, but like they're just not getting it and they only want what they want. And it was like a full good thing my mom was with me, like I said, but he was kicking and screaming and I was trying to get him in the car and like put him down and be like nice, like the gentle parenting, me like dying inside. But he had a full meltdown. Like it was the worst I think he's ever had over this stupid shopping cart. So I don't know in those situations leaving the playground is one. I don't know if that happens to you when you leave a fun activity or something that like you can just feel it and you have to just get out of there. Like, does that happen with him yet?
We are We haven't seen that yet, but he loves daycare a lot, and
Good.
he's always extremely happy when we go pick him up, like, out of a Hollywood movie, like, slow motion running, big
Like,
smile,
mama.
drool flying, just like, "Oh, la la, mama," and then he hugs me, and then he wants to go back to play. It's like he's so
Mm,
excited that I'm there. So I haven't seen it, but I know it's coming because when he has fun, I mean, like all of us, why does the fun have to stop? They don't understand. Like, this is a
mhm.
good thing. Why would we leave the park? This is a great thing. Just like with the shopping cart. I mean, what a cool thing that, Cash wanted to do. Push it in, take it out, take it home. Like, obviously, that makes sense in their little brains. Let's bring the shopping cart home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous because I see it all the time. Like, I live downtown Toronto. We walk everywhere, we bike everywhere. So I see lots of parents with many, many kids of different ages. And I have seen many a tantrum trying to leave the park. And this summer, he's going to be between 18 months to 2 years old by the time we hit the park. And I know it's going to happen. And I'm just hoping I can bribe him with some snacks
Mhm.
or
There,
something.
if a truck drives by or if there's a distraction, it's so helpful. Or I find the biggest thing for me and what works for Cash is like really priming him up, giving him like, it's so annoying. And I probably sound psychotic if people hear me, but giving him so many cues about like, we're going to leave soon. We're going to leave soon. And sometimes that does help because I think then they are thinking about it or prepared because I find if you just remove them from a situation really quickly or say, even if it's bath time, we're going to go in the bath. If he doesn't want to, if he hasn't heard 10
Mhm.
times that he's going in the bath, then he doesn't want to do it. They don't like transition. And I like you said, I can understand if you're having fun or doing something and you want to keep doing it, then you're not going to be happy. You've
Okay,
got
perfect.
this.
Timing. I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember that.
So I want to talk a little bit about when did you go back to work after having your son and what was that like being in front of the camera and kind of like the glitz and the glam of being on TV with the hair and the makeup? And then like, did you mentally feel okay? Or were you having a hard time at first in the first few weeks making that transition?
Oh, so backtrack a bit more. When I went from working to maternity leave, that was such wicked whiplash for me because, like I mentioned, my career was a huge part of my existence before becoming a mom. It was who I was, it was how I operated. I loved my job. I had, big aspirations and big ambitions. And I was someone who just loved to work all the time on my day job at eTalk as a TV host. And then, of course, on my many, many passion projects on the side. And then when I became a mom, and it took us many, many years and lots of IVF to get Gray. So mentally, I was very ready for him. I wasn't quite ready for the whiplash of having my life as I knew it ultimately put on pause, when I stepped into maternity leave. And I thought that whiplash was going to be the worst whiplash, I'd ever have to experience. But going back to work was also quite intense. I would like the whiplash of going from maternity leave back to work also took me a little bit by surprise. And not that I wasn't ready. I took 13 months off. And I have to say, around like the 10, 11-month mark, I was pretty ready to go back to work. And a big part of that was that we were lucky. We got in early at a daycare. And if you live in a big city or a place where there's not a lot of daycares, when you get an early spot, you say, yes, no problem.
Or in
We are coming.
Canada in general?
Exactly. Like, it's a tough
It's
and
hard.
he goes to the YMCA down the street. I was a YMCA kid growing up, and so I love what they do.
You turned out
So when we
fine.
got into the YMCA just down the street, it was much earlier than we had anticipated, but everyone I knew in my life in Canada said the same thing, like, "You take it or you might lose it, even
Mhm.
if you don't need it. You take the financial hit, you adjust as you need." And he thrived. He had so much fun, and then I found myself knowing he was happy, I was ready to go back to work. But I ended up going back to work after 13 months because we spent about 6 weeks in South Africa with my partner's family as a family before, I'd have to go back and have a real job again. So when we came back, I was mentally ready, knowing my little guy was happy at school, and that transition was lovely and just made it so much easier. And the actual going back to work part, the transition was also really lovely. I, couldn't believe I was getting to go to work, aka leave the house. Usually I show up in sweatpants and I get to work with incredibly talented makeup artists, wonderful stylists. Our team of producers on eTalk are the best in the business, and I get to interview and have conversations with wildly interesting people after 13 months of mostly singing lullabies, cleaning up
Nap
explosive
trapped.
diarrhea,
Mhm.
and forgetting to brush my hair for days in a row. Like it was such a contrast to what my daily existence had been, that I welcomed it with open arms, the ability to have conversations that were not just about what it's like to be a mom or how my boy is doing, but I was starting to be able to have my own voice and my own presence in my own life. But the part that I wasn't ready for is that I'd have my mornings and my sons with my sorry, the morning and the evening with my son,
Mhm.
the day for work. And then somehow I was still supposed to find time for the rest of life. You know, the managing a house, doing groceries, doing laundry, going to the gym, making sure you get vitamin D. Are you getting your 10,000 steps? Have you remembered to shower? Did you call your mom? Are you being a good partner? The many, many things that, make up a full life. I was struggling to find how in the world it was possible to be a good mom, a good team member in television, and then somehow also manage a life. That's the part that it took me, I wanna say, like, 6 to 8 weeks to figure out. And I wouldn't say I've got it figured out now, but at least it doesn't leave me feeling so empty and so sad at the end of the day, feeling like I've just shit the bed across so many different ways. So it was whiplash that I didn't know I was expecting. I felt like I can handle the return to work, and I could feel like I was giving Gray still a really good amount of my attention and my care. It was everything else I felt like I was just being a horrible person at, and that part was really, really hard.
Mhm. Did you feel like in the first few months when you're obviously still in the fog and the thick of it, like my life will never be the same and I don't know how I'll socialize. I don't know how I'll go to the gym, how I'll even manage my work life balance. Did you have any of those like spiraling emotions or feelings? Because I did.
Like, every day for so long. Like, so I went back to work end of November 2024. So the timing was, I think, pretty magical because I was able to go back for a little bit and then everybody took time off for the holidays. So it's almost like I was able to get my feet wet a little bit, come back to being a mama bit full time over the holidays, and then start fresh again in January of 2025. But that those first few weeks, I would cry every single day, and I would just be so overwhelmed by my inability to do anything that I wanted to do in a 24-hour cycle, because even now, I'm a couple of months into being back to work. Like 4 maybe? It's been 4 months and I've been back to work. I still by the time Gray goes to bed at 7 p.m., I feel like I've run a marathon
Mhm.
and I have no energy left to do the things like have a social life or go to the gym. So I'd say like I'm still very much finding my groove, but it doesn't leave me feeling as broken anymore. I'm slowly but surely finding ways to make sure that my days are not just devoted to being a mom or to being a good TV host, because ultimately that's where I was putting all of my energy. But as we all know, and I know this too from years of like running a health and wellness podcast and website, we have to put ourselves first. We have to make
Mhm.
sure that we're pouring from, a full cup, or at least like a cup that has a little something at the bottom instead of always pouring from an empty cup. So I'm slowly but surely finding my way. And like one of the easiest ways I've found is that I just have to get up an hour before the boys do in my house, my partner, and my son. And I get that hour to myself where sometimes I sit and stare at a wall and drink coffee. Sometimes
Mhm.
maybe I'll do a little Pilates YouTube video. It's all so different, the things I do to make sure that I'm a full functioning human being, but at least I have that 60 minutes before anyone else is awake in my house to make sure that I fill up my cup even a tiny bit so that I can go about my day.
And what time would you typically during the week get up? What time's that at?
6?
6? Okay, that's doable.
Yeah, like,
I
not
f
bad.
I feel like we see that a lot on social media where people are getting up. Sometimes there's this one girl I follow. I forget if she's a nurse, but she's a mom influencer and she gets up at like 3:45. She obviously has to go to work super early to do the things, the workout, the journaling, have her coffee, prepare lunches for the kids. And I'm never doing that. That's insane. But I do agree with you getting up a half hour, an hour beforehand because there's something about being woken up by whatever of them saying mama or crying, and you're just kind of like jolted out of bed, waking up like that. Obviously, there's months and months that you have to do that most of the time, but it's not the best way to start your morning. It's
No,
really
it, like,
not.
puts your nervous system
Yeah.
into, like, full-blown
You're like,
overdrive.
I have to brush my teeth so fast. I have to change. I have to get my, like, you just obviously get into this spiral right away. And I don't think, definitely not healthy for the nervous system. But sitting, I'll do that sometimes and like scroll through Pinterest and just sip on my coffee kind of in the pitch black in my living room, and I'm
Yes.
happy. And then when I hear him in the monitor, I'm just like, okay, I'm ready now. It's funny.
Yeah. You gotta, like it's like, like, if we were professional athletes, we would stretch before a
Yeah.
race.
We put our
We
headphones
need to
on.
give ourselves that moment to
Yeah.
stretch, okay? We are professional athletes in a different sense, but even we deserve a little stretching break.
Oh my gosh, totally. I need to get back into that routine post vacation, and with the time change as we were talking about is I need to like recalibrate my routine. And
Yeah,
I will.
actually, I know. The sun is shining beautifully today in Toronto, which is
Yes.
amazing. It's been really, really great the past little while, and the temperatures are warming up, and I keep putting off my "I'm gonna become a runner again" chapter of my life. I keep
Mhm.
being like, "Oh, once it's above 0, once I see the sun."
Once the time
Those things are
changes,
happening, so I'm saying it out loud. This is the week. This is the week where I am
you
gonna
can
carve
do
out a
it.
little bit more time for myself, and I'm gonna not just do YouTube Pilates videos,
You're gonna get
nothing
out of
wrong
the
with doing,
house.
but I'm gonna get out of the house and maybe get some fresh air.
Hey, I'm here for you. I'm cheering you on. Okay, do you think that women in general, like let's paint a broad brush here of this picture, but do you think that we have been in the dark about like the fourth trimester, kind of what we're talking about, that it's you get there and then you're just like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? And do you think that it's just something that we're now talking about and women are now understanding like how much pressure is on us and how difficult it is to like not only deal with if you're breastfeeding or your body or just the sleep deprivation?
I mean, yes and no. I think there are amazing thought leaders out there who've been trying to remind people that the fourth trimester is a thing. And then all the moms out there who are living and breathing the fourth trimester are perfect, like, anecdotes of how challenging it is. But the thing is when you're
Sure.
in the fourth trimester, so often you just have to get through it. So even if you're someone who, like you, thankfully, is having these types of conversations, I don't think the messaging is spread wide enough for most people to feel seen or valued when they're struggling in the fourth trimester. And I think that's why podcasts like yours are so important, because we do need to celebrate the fact that we are amazing for getting through the fourth trimester, but it is equally hard. It's really challenging because we're meeting ourselves in a new place. Our life looks a lot different than it did before we became a mom. And when the fourth trimester kind of comes about, you're just supposed to like buck up and do it. Like, you're just
Mhm.
supposed to like show up and be grateful and connect to your baby, and still host people in your house, and physically you're going through changes. Your hormones take forever to go back down. Then you throw in breastfeeding or the struggle of breastfeeding or choosing not to breastfeed. I mean, it is overwhelming, and I would love to see changes in like the medical community, in like the mom community, in the mental health community, where there's just more open dialogue about the fourth trimester and the varied kind of directions that it can go. The fourth trimester can be so challenging, or it can be really beautiful, or it can be a really messy combination of both. There's no one way to go through the fourth trimester. And I think so many people, thankfully, now are talking about the difficulties and challenges of getting pregnant. Like, I was really open about it. And we talk about IVF and IUI, and companies are starting to support, individuals who want to go that route. We talk very openly about what it is to be pregnant and those challenges. And it'd be amazing to see more conversations about the fourth trimester, because it is a whole different ballgame.
I have to say that I'm 37, so I had my son when I was 35. And in my 35 years of life and being pregnant, I never heard the term fourth trimester. Like here I am, mom podcast, and like never, I think until it happens to you or until you're in that world, like maybe you've heard about it or people are hearing about it more and more. But like I never heard my friends when they had kids 10 years before me ever talk about the fourth trimester. So I think it is changing and there's still a lot
Yeah.
that needs to happen. And I think I am one of those people, I'm always worried about being like judged sometimes
Mm.
in certain situations. I think we just are as humans. That's normal. But I think that there can be a lot of judgment that people are met with or think that they'll be met with in the fourth trimester, whether it's not having a bond or not breast, whatever it is, sending their child to daycare after a few months, like whatever it is that you want to do, there's a lot of judgment and like haters and judgy people out there. And they want to see moms doing or women doing what they've been doing forever. And it's like, not happening, not the case. So I think that there's a lot that we need to kind of work on there as a whole. And
Oh, yeah.
it's hard.
I had Gray also when I was 35, and so I was, like, one of the last of my friends to have babies, and I saw how different all their I mean, at the time, I didn't know the language 4th trimester, but how different their first couple months with their babies were, and some straight out of a storybook,
Mhm.
like, everything you would hope for, wish for with the physical recovery of mom, the bond with baby, the supportive partner, um the family around to step in. And then I saw people I love and respect and admire, struggle so hard with postpartum or their relationships, really struggled. And I feel like I got to be a student of life by watching my beautiful friends all become moms. That by the time I, stepped into the fourth trimester, I felt like I had a lot of armor and tools in my toolbox because of the women in my life who shared their stories, which again is why I commend you for doing this podcast. Because the more we can share our stories, the more other people can feel seen and heard, and hopefully less shame and hopefully way less judgment. Like, we cannot judge each other. It is
Mhm.
so hard. We don't need to
So
add
hard.
judgment to the conversation.
No. No, totally agree. So you mentioned IVF, and I've never said this. This is news, might even be news to Mark, that we also did IVF. And I haven't shared that because there's a little more to it, which I'm not quite ready to share yet for some health reasons that eventually I will share. But that is like a whole different beast mentally. I don't know what it was like for you. And that's the thing. I have so much sympathy for people that go through that process and it takes years for for it to work essentially. And I had a hard time relating to friends. So many of my friends have thought about it or either did it and weren't successful. But it is hard in the route I went to like relate to people that did IVF as well, because it wasn't an issue as far as we knew, like everything was fine. It wasn't that we couldn't conceive. There were reasons why we went the IVF route.
Mm.
And I wasn't like ashamed about it, but I felt very private about it. And I don't want to say I wasn't like excited, but there was so much emotionally and mentally
Yeah.
going into it. And then like the physical part, obviously, of doing it and then carrying a child. But it's really can mess up your like way of thinking and pregnancy. It wasn't until my son was born and I physically held him. I was lucky that we did have a great bond, but it was not until like held him and I saw him and touched him that I like felt real. Do you know what I mean? Like, was that process all fuzzy and strange to you and like an outer body experience?
100%. First of all, I love that you're an IVF warrior. Takes a lot of guts to say that out loud when you haven't shared it publicly.
Yes.
Um, Being an IVF mama, my gosh, it is so rough. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Like, I would love for everybody who wants to have a baby, who wants to start a family, to just be able to snap their fingers,
Hmm.
get lucky on the first try, have the miracle of life happen, bada bing, bada boom, happy ending. I want that for everybody, because having to go through IUI and IVF for whatever the reason is rough.
Hmm.
It robbed me of, and my partner, of joy, of being present in our lives for almost 4 years. And it was
Wow.
something we kept really private. And I'm a very open person. But at the time, it was just something I wanted to keep to myself. I couldn't fathom people checking in on me with good intentions.
Yeah.
When you find out your friend is trying to have a baby or their early days pregnancy, what do you do as someone who cares and loves them? You check in on them.
Mhm.
You ask them how they're feeling. How's it going? Did you get an update on the scan? I couldn't fathom people doing that to me while we were going through a struggling attempt to have a baby, because I knew that every time someone would check in on me with the best of intentions, it would be really triggering. So we made the decision very early on to keep it private, which meant we were living a double life. I mean,
Mm.
if anyone's listening, like every person is different. Every journey to having a baby is different with IVF and IUI. But ultimately, like I was at the clinic multiple times a week,
So
every single
much.
week for a better part of 4 years because of how high risk and complicated everything was. On top of, being a full-time TV host, running a weekly podcast, having a run club, volunteering, doing all the things that so many of us do. But then on top of it, throw in a bunch of injections, hormones,
Blood work.
ultrasounds, doctors, people invading your personal space
Mhm.
in more ways than you can imagine. That one of the coping mechanisms I ended up developing was dissociating fully from my body because there was so much invasive elements to the IVF and IUI that we had to go through. I fully dissociated physically, but also mentally, because like so many, families out there, we had a miscarriage on our way to becoming parents. So when we finally did get pregnant with Gray, we had done 3 IUIs and 3 IVFs at that point. I kind of didn't know how to be excited or to have the belief that I was going to make it through the end of the pregnancy. When you go through so much trauma and so much loss, when in your journey to becoming a parent, your brain ultimately wants to protect you from feeling those things again. And a coping mechanism is dissociating, where something is happening but you won't believe it until you hit a certain milestone, or you physically won't believe it until you see the bump or you see the
Mhm.
kick or you hold your baby or whatever it is. Every single person's different. I remember being very pregnant, like we're talking 6 months pregnant, being at Mount Sinai here in Toronto, and still feeling like, oh, I'm probably not gonna make it to the end. Like, this is not actually gonna work. So, like, don't get too excited, Chloe, because there's no guarantee.
Mhm.
And then thankfully, we did make it, to term, and we had a healthy boy, and I was lucky enough to bond right away, and it became real. But it was really, really tough to feel those feelings of excitement or to have the sense of belief that maybe it was gonna happen. And it was really challenging seeing so many people in my life get pregnant like this, that, sharing it, because
Mhm.
I was able to be truly joyful for them, but it didn't take away from the fact that I was extremely sad and distraught and hurting on the inside. Like, the extreme emotions I felt for so many years, and especially when I was pregnant, was unreal. Like, just you feel like you're two people in one body any given day.
I can relate to that so much. Would you change anything now, like not having shared it and keeping it private and kind of having a hard time with some of those emotions or feelings? If you could go back or if you wanted to do it again, do you think you would do it the same way or would you do it differently?
I think, like, I give myself credit for just doing what felt was possible at the time, but if for whatever reason I had a magical time machine and could go back, I probably would have started working with a therapist
Mm.
that specializes in individuals struggling with fertility or loss, um, to have a safe space to talk to. I think I still would have kept it very private, only because my life is public and has a lot of public elements. And my day to day, I interact with, gosh, 50 to 100 people every single day. And we're all very close. And, it's quite a big family. And to have that many people always checking on me, I don't think I would have coped. So I think I would have still kept it private from the people in my life, but I think I would have leaned on mental health professionals much sooner in my story. I linked up with a really incredible therapist, again, that specializes in fertility and miscarriages and IVF after having a miscarriage, because I was really struggling to kind of come out of the darkness of that. And I wish I had started it earlier. Like, I wish I had been proactive with my
Mhm.
therapy, the way we're proactive with our dental health. We go to the dentist and we get our teeth cleaned.
So
Not
true.
only we don't just go to the dentist when we have a cavity or we need a root canal, we go on a regular basis to try to, mitigate the more serious dental situations that might come up in our life. And I wish I had done that with a mental health professional throughout my IVF journey to have a safe space, because even though my partner is wonderful, he's my best friend, and I'm so, I feel so lucky that, we're doing this thing called life together. he's not a mental health professional. Like, he's not equipped to deal with me. He's doing his best, but he also was going through his own stuff. And looking back, I realized I put a lot on him to be the person throughout it all. And I think it would have been awesome for all of us, like him and I, to also have some mental health professional, that to have that resource earlier on rather than only using it during crisis.
Yeah, those are wise words. I feel like I would do the exact same thing because I definitely had some of that dissociation with, I think, with what was happening in my
Yeah.
body. And it is a weird, I think, however it happens for you and getting pregnant, it is a weird, or it can be, not for everyone. It is a weird experience in some respect anyway, just like thinking about it and worrying. I don't think that there's enough, like you probably worried extra because of experiencing miscarriage, but there is not, like, you worry so much. I worried my entire pregnancy, like the entire time. I found it very stressful because there are no guarantees. You know what I mean? Even when the baby comes out for the mother or the little human being, like there are no guarantees sometimes. And people obviously have suffered extreme losses or challenges during that experience. But it's stressful. Like I am one of those people that my brain takes a thought and just spirals and takes it into a million different situations. And my birthing experience was like, there were a few complications at the very end. I was induced. You were probably induced or had a C-section when you do IVF. I feel like they do all these things to make sure everything kind of happens or ends the way they wanted to in like a controlled situation. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, so we had a C-section. Gray was breech as of 28
Ugh,
weeks, but
ugh,
one of the reasons why we
cannot
struggled to
birth
get
that.
pregnant. Yeah, one of the reasons we struggled to conceive without the help of the scientific community is I turns out I only have half a uterus. I have what's called a unicornuate uterus.
What?
So I have very little like room in there for him to grow. So a big reason why he was high risk was a lot of unicornuate babies like don't make it to term or don't,
Wow.
you just don't see it that often because there's such little room for them to grow and to thrive. So once he was breech at 28 weeks, they were like, you're probably going to stay breech till he comes out.
Yeah,
So
no
then
room for
we knew
him to.
very, very early on that a C-section was going to be probably our route. And as a type A anxious person, like I was kinda cool with the C-section,
You
in the
know when it's
sense
going down.
yeah, like, I was able to plan my life around it. I worked up until 72 hours before because I felt good. We did a walkthrough to help with my anxiety, so I physically, like, felt a little bit more calm going into it. I had no idea how massive the surgery is or what the recovery would
Really
be like, but
is.
leading into it,
Seemed fine.
I had no idea. So it seemed like a really good option, and at the end of the day, I was like, I want a healthy baby. Like, I need this little boy to grow as big as he can in my body, come out, and then we'll like feed him nonstop.
Mhm. It haven't stopped since. It is, yeah. I think like I told maybe a friend or two, like max, and my parents and in-laws knew, but no one else did. And I think that if we did it again, which I'm starting now at the 2-year mark to feel a little more
Ooh.
like, I don't know if I would tell anyone. I feel like I can relate so much to what you said about people kind of like checking in and just, I don't like that. I like to check in on other people and be there for people, but I don't like it when it comes to me. I just don't. I don't want extra conversations. I don't want to have to fake it if I'm having
And
a shitty day, or if I am having a shitty day, maybe I don't want to talk to that person. I don't know. It's a very weird thing. And I think for anyone listening that is thinking about doing IVF or has any concerns about getting pregnant or is doing IVF, like, I think the takeaway from Chloe and I is talk to a professional.
Yeah, or, like, find a community, like, there's
Yes.
again, going back, I got the diagnosis of a unicorn uterus, and I found a Facebook mom group. I've never in my life been a part of a Facebook group before, and I found so much solace and comfort being a part of this group with individuals that had the same rare diagnosis as I did. I didn't necessarily participate, but sometimes when I would be feeling the feels and feeling very alone and isolated throughout our IVF process, I would just like go start reading things on this board and it really helped. So, you know, I again, if I did this again, I would keep it private from people in my life, but I would find ways to not feel so lonely. So again, mental health professional or like someone at the IVF clinic who I don't know you vibe with, but like going through it alone is really, really challenging. But I do think it's equally as important to protect your peace and to protect your boundaries. And sometimes that means shutting people out, even if they're the people who love you the most in this life, because you just don't know how triggered you might feel when they check in on you.
Just having the extra, yeah, like the extra voices, whether their intentions, I'm sure they are 99% of the time they're good and well intent, like the intentions
Yeah.
are good, but you just don't want, like, it makes me feel icky thinking about it. I just don't want people. I want to go. I want to be anonymous when I go there almost. I don't want to talk to anyone and I want to leave. But I can't imagine. My work was from home and I run my own business. So it's like I was flexible to like, and I lived really close to the clinic at the time downtown. I could just zip up there. I could park in a loading zone because it was before it would even start, go and get my appointment done, blood work, and leave. Now I live further in the suburbs. And thinking about doing that process all again is like, that's what I don't want to do. Like, give me the hormone, give me the injections. Like, I don't really care as much. That stuff doesn't bother me. It might be different this time, but it's really just the logistics of having a schedule around like conceiving in that form that I found just like, oh, I don't want to do it again. It's so
Also, it's
annoying.
not sexy. Like, it's just,
No,
you grow up and you think having a baby is just gonna be this awesome thing. You're
passionate
gonna have a
night.
sexy hot night, or whatever you decide to do. There's romance involved.
Mhm.
It's not.
Yeah,
If you have to
it's
do
the
IVF,
opposite.
it is not sexy, guys. There's not a lot of romance in IVF, and you just gotta power through. But the logistics thing is wild, especially now that you're a mom. Like, it's not just you and work that you have to think of. There's like another little person involved. Like, who's gonna do drop-offs and pickups and, you
Exactly.
know.
It's a whole thing. Anyways, like, would you ever consider? I don't know if I can ask you that, but like, I
Oh my
feel
god,
like this is a
100%.
safe
I'm open.
space. Like, would you ever consider doing it again, or like you just happy? You're like, I've got a healthy child. This is
Yeah.
good.
I have always envisioned one. I've always really felt in
I
my
love
heart
that.
that I was meant to be a mom to one. Um, and I don't have it in me to do IVF again. It truly was the most painful, time consuming, emotionally wrecking, challenging 4 years um, of
Yeah,
my
4 years
life.
is a long time.
It was a long time. And I don't think I have it in me again. But more importantly, I feel so sure in my heart that my life is full with gray, um, that I feel really, really content and happy and, excited about what life brings. With that said, my partner and I always say, if we wake up pregnant tomorrow, well, our life story is changing. We're going to be parents to two. But I don't think for me in our life and our story, pursuing IVF for a second time is the right path for us. But if for whatever reason we get a surprise miracle child with like the uterus that I have, then bring it on.
Bring it on. No, that's good, and I think that's important if that's what you envision and that's what feels right to you, because I struggle with that a lot. And I think there can be some outside influences sometimes that are kind of like negative, not as much maybe now, but about having one child. Like, do you ever feel that pressure about or judgment that say you can't just have one, you need to have another one? And it's like, you don't know what I went through. You don't know what goes on in my home. And like, maybe I just don't want to. Like, I don't want, maybe there'll be less fighting in your house. That's for sure.
I mean, it's just so weird. It goes back to, like, society telling us that, like, you if you wanna have a family, oh, you can't just have one, you need to
Hmm.
have lots. No, no, no. There's actually, like, no rules. Like, you have what feels good for you and your family and your child and your financial situation, but so I live really, like, downtown. Like, I am downtown Toronto, and I think the mindset of here versus where I grew up, a small town, I only really have those 2 to compare. I'm sure there are outliers, but I grew up in an extremely small town outside, of Montreal, the province of Quebec. We're talking like teeny tiny. Like, I had to go to the next town when I learned to drive because there were no traffic lights when I
Same.
was
I
growing up
had no
there.
traffic lights where
Okay?
I grew up.
Yeah.
So
There are now. There's quite a few, actually.
okay.
Hudson has had quite a glow up at St. Lazare. But at the time, it was small town, and the mindset there, still now when I go back, is people have multiple kids, you know? Like, you grow up, you find your significant other, you get a house, you have babies. Not baby, you have babies. If that's, it's either people, like, don't have kids or they have, like, many, many kids. But in the city, I find the mindset is a little bit different. People have kids later. I had Gray at 35. People choose not to have kids, or maybe they just have one. And then, yeah, there are still people that want to have multiple. But thankfully, I feel like where I live and the types of families that exist, and there's such a varied amount of families and types of families, that kind of like you just show up as you are. But I do
Mhm.
feel like when I go back home and I'm more in like a small town area, people are like, "Ooh, when are you guys gonna have another one? What's the plan?" And again, people mean well. Like, they're just like, they want more. They love kids. They think more is more, and to each their own. But I feel like my hands are quite full with one. He is only 18 months, so we can always talk again in 6 months. But right now, feeling good with the one and done situation.
Good. And I wish I knew. I wish it was a little more clear. And I think it's probably common not to know. And I think I've heard that that's how you know that you're not done. If you're like, if you think about having another one, then it's like, well, you're not. But I just, yeah, doing the whole process again and then like being in the newborn stage and all that, I'm just like, it hurts my head. And I'm not down with the small town lifestyle either. And I totally think it makes sense for you guys, your lifestyle, your career. And Gray is going to see and have lots of friends that also are only children as well. You're not growing up in this suburb area where people have like 4 or 5 kids. And he's like, why don't I have any siblings? So that I think is
Yeah.
nice. And it's also your body and your choice and your family's decision. And yeah, like if a little unicorn baby wiggles in there, then like whatever. But
Good. What do we say? Bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah, listen, I do feel like we have extra responsibility if we decide, and our life story is to only have one. I do feel like I have extra responsibility to make sure I give him access to the world when it comes to socializing and activities and getting to play with other kids. Um, because
yeah, you're
socializing
in
is such a
downtown Toronto.
good
You
life
can give him all
skill.
the things.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, we go on the streetcar and he is exposed to some wonderful individuals talking and singing, and everyone is so friendly. And yeah, like, he's already just exposed to so much, but I do feel that responsibility as well, to just like get him out there, get him exposed. Because right now, let me tell you, in the morning when the robot vacuum goes on and does this thing, we call him Steve McLean. Him and Gray, best pals, but Gray does need human friends as well, not just a robot.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in daycare. That's great. That's great for the social life. Okay, before we start to wrap, Chloe, I have a couple more questions for you. I want to know, I don't want to say they're rapid fire. They're not really rapid fire, but what surprised you the most becoming a mom? Is there anything that surprised you?
Oh, I mean, this is the cheesiest thing I think I could possibly say, but it's the first thing that popped into my mind, and it's that I really didn't know, like, I could love a little
Yes,
person
so much.
the way that I love Gray. And I so wish I could say something, like, funny and witty, but ultimately, like, that is the thing that surprised me the most. I'm a very loving person. Like, I love to hug. I love love. I love to make life the most wonderful adventure. Like, I really do thrive in a world of love. And I wasn't really ready for the depths
Hmm.
of love that I feel for my son. Sometimes I just stare at him and I'm like, "How the fuck did I make you?" Like, my
Hmm.
gosh, like, I just wanna protect you and raise you to be this awesome little dude that's gonna go out there and do good things and be a good man. And yeah, that part really blew me away.
And it's interesting to share that with a partner because I find I'll look at my husband and it's funny to catch his eye looking at him and being so happy watching him. And I'm like, I know. Like we just look at each other, we're like, yeah, love him. It's
You
so
made a really
amazing.
good one. You
Yeah,
made a good
it's so nice. And those little moments. What do you think the biggest lie is that mothers are told?
Oh, that it's beautiful. I feel like mothers are told, like, especially when you do IVF. People always say, like, "You're gonna get through it, and it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be beautiful." I'm like, "Everything's gonna be great." Because IVF sucks so much. Like,
Hmm.
people have to say these things to each other so that you, like, keep going to the appointments, keep getting your blood drawn. And I got swindled by the romance of the story, and it is really hard. Motherhood, don't get me wrong, like, I really mean it when I say I did not know I could love this much, but I also did not know motherhood would be this hard.
It is
And,
really that whiplash you
it
said, like the conflicting emotions. I posted something about this today. I think that is a really hard piece to regulate your emotions and go from like 0 to 100 to 0 to 100 to like it's a roller
yeah,
coaster.
and before becoming a mom, like, I was the main character in my life.
Mm.
Like, I work in entertainment, so we always talk about, like, main character energy. Like, we all have main character energy in our own lives. But then you have to be, like, supporting cast, especially when they're little, and that part's really, really hard. For 35 years, I lived life for me, and not that I'm a selfish person, but, like, I went to the gym when I wanted to. I had a full-time job and passion projects. I went on dates. I did this, that. I did whatever. I would go to New York for the weekend. And then when you have a little one, you really have to kinda take a back seat for a bit and be supporting cast to their main character energy. And that part's really, really hard when you're used to living life very independently, very autonomously. And yeah, it just takes a minute. Like motherhood is hard. Hard,
Apparently
hard,
it
hard.
takes, I don't know if you've heard the term matrescence, which I've only learned about more
What
recently.
is that?
I know. It's essentially like the becoming of being a mom, like you're becoming mother is how they say it. And it was termed by a doula. I think it was in like the 60s, like a while ago, 60s or 70s. And it's in comparison to the term like adolescence, like what it is to become like an adult, like to become a woman or a man or whatever, just become an adult, that you're becoming a mother. And it takes apparently 2 to 3 years because it affects us in every realm of our life, literally every ounce. And I had Jessie Harold on. She wrote a book called Mother Shift. And until I read her book and like learned about this, I wished someone had told me this, and I wished had read this book other than like some of the baby bullshit books that I read ahead of time, because it's so true. I only feel like now, 2 years and a little bit into it, that I'm like, okay, I've got the routine down. I've got it. Like it's motherhood becomes ingrained in you and who you are. It doesn't happen overnight. And like, yeah, like scientifically, statistically, it takes 2 to 3 years to become a mother.
I
Isn't that
love that
crazy?
term. I
I
wanna read that book
I
because I
know.
I feel I feel that in my bones. I am annoyingly an overachiever. Like, I wish I could be more casual and chill about life, but I'm type A. I like to go and do something, and I wanna be really good at it.
Mhm.
I struggle when I feel
Same.
subpar. It's a blessing and a curse because it means you're never quite content with anything, but the nice part about it is you're willing to go out there and try hard. Sometimes I wish I could be a bit more casual about things, but the matrescence part is very humbling. It is extremely humbling to wanna be a great mom and a great role model and a great partner and a great friend and a great community member and a great employee, and to feel like somehow it's just kinda not possible to do all the things all at once anymore, and
Mhm.
just finding that new groove and that new baseline of is what makes for a full day and a full life.
Mhm. No, it's constant, and we're constantly evolving in that whole, like, aspect, and my mom will joke to me, she'll come in, make supper, she'll just be hanging out, and she's like, "It doesn't end, like, you're 37 and she's 70 now, and she's still here helping me make supper or do whatever," and I'm like, "You're right, this is forever." So, you know,
Accept it.
after 2 or 3 years, I guess it just becomes part of our being, which thank God.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
last question, Chloe, I have for you is what is some of the worst advice that someone gave you in relation to like either pregnancy or becoming a mom? Is there anything that stands out?
Oh, gosh, people love to give advice, eh? I'm trying to
Gosh,
remember what has stuck out as, like, annoying
I'm trying to think
advice.
too. I think like people, sometimes it's just like the opinions. Did you keep your name or like the gender?
Yeah, we kept the name quiet. I don't trust anyone to not pass judgment on names. People can't help themselves, but, like, they hear a name, and especially gray. Like, gray is
I love that name.
a color, you know what I
Mm,
mean? But, like, we love it. It was the first name we thought of, and it's the only one that stuck, and he is gray, like, and it's perfect. So we kept it quiet. The gender we shared. And it felt really good to share it because it started to make it all feel more real. I'm trying to think about, like, worst advice. I honestly think, like, collectively, I just wanna tell people, scale back on the advice you give. I think I
Mm,
started tuning it out, to be honest, because people can't help themselves but wanna tell you all the things. And I think ultimately, I remember getting bombarded with advice that I think I started to just tune it out, and I would just smile and nod and say, "Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much." 'Cause,
yeah.
like, nothing really stands out as horrible, but I do remember feeling very, very overwhelmed with the amount of people, wanting to share their 2 cents. The one thing I will say that does stand out as something that I struggled with, and not that it was an annoying piece of advice, I just found the whole thing, like, I think we need to collectively remember this, is in the later part of my pregnancy, um, people would only talk to me about my pregnancy.
Mm,
How was I feeling? The way that I looked? What was next on the docket for, the doctor checkups? Are we ready with the nursery? I stopped being Chloe. I very
remember
quickly
me.
became Chloe, the pregnant person. And don't get me wrong, I loved being pregnant. I was so happy that we were able to be at that part. Like, I don't want to take away from people who cannot get pregnant. But I really remember feeling so little as a human being in the bigger picture during that last chapter. I stopped being able to exist as Chloe for a long time. People only spoke to me about Chloe, the pregnant, soon to be mom. And I remember feeling really, really, like, sad, quite sad about it, that I stopped being interesting outside of just being pregnant. And again, I don't think anyone's trying to be mean. But I think it's important for all of us to remember that being a pregnant individual is a part of that individual's story, but it's not the only thing that makes them them.
Yeah.
And I try very hard to remember that now when I see people in my life who are pregnant, get pregnant, or people I meet who are very obviously pregnant,
Hmm.
to not only just treat them like this thing that's carrying another human, and, like, to
Yeah.
remember that they're huge, like, they're entire human beings.
I think the same thing happens once the baby comes, and maybe it's different because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
focused on the baby and like everything shifts. I didn't have that experience necessarily, but I know people that shared that exact same thing. They were kind of like, why? Like they were almost annoyed that people weren't focusing on other aspects of their lives or who they were, that they were just saying like, I'm more than just this pregnant person. So I think that that's definitely like a thing. And even when the baby comes, there are sometimes you just go in public and people can't help themselves. And obviously it's lovely. And maybe it shifts a bit then because you're just kind of like in la la land over this baby. But people do become very fixated on the pregnant belly,
Yeah.
on the baby, where sometimes you just want to like sit and gab and like check out as a mom, but it's hard to do. It's not easy. And I thankfully had some great girlfriends who had babies around the same time and same age. So we would just go. And like, that's when I started having the idea for the podcast, was like trying to take some of those conversations. Like I haven't got that unfiltered, but maybe I will, who knows? And get into some of the realities, because if I didn't have them and have those discussions, I would have thought like I was an insane person if I kept it all in and just, unload on them and not just keep it in. And the good and the bad about the baby or the pregnancy. It's not, about being like, oh, he slept this long and this happened. It's like, what the fuck was that? Like, what's happening? I remember my friend Alex being like, I hate this. I hate this stage. And I'm like, you're right. I hate it too. And then like a few weeks later, we're like, oh, I'm so happy that's over. This is so much better. But you need those people,
Yeah.
whether you need a professional to help you digest those conversations, or you can rely on a friend or family.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's
I love
very
this. This is
important.
why you need to keep doing this. I
I'm
I
going
think
to
it's
try.
so great to be able to have a place. Yeah, now that I'm a mom, nothing is private anymore.
No.
Everything in my life is public, and so this is a great forum and a great, like, medium to be able to share these stories.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy you were able to come on. We just scratched the surface in our lives, but I think we had some, pretty important conversations. And if people want to learn more about Chloe or follow you, where is the best place that they can do that?
Yes, come hang out, everybody. I am, I'm 36, so come hang out with me on Instagram. I like to say I'm on TikTok, but it's
I
just
love the
just come on
gram.
Instagram. The Chloe Wild, Wild with an E is where you can find me and drop a DM, say hello.
And follow her fabulous fashion because we didn't mention that, but she's just doing
Oh
100
yeah.
days of fashion, which I love. You're so
Try to post
adorable.
more content, not just mom life.
That's right. I know we are people. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Chloe. This has been such a pleasure speaking with you.